this is Jonathan, your fitness business management expert, and in this video, I'm going to go over the psychology of client plateauing. I got a question not too long ago from a guy from Hawaii. I'll put your name up here. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. I forgot to check before I made the video. But he was telling me about a client that he had that had lost a lot of weight, and they got to a certain point, and the client just plateaued. Couldn't get them to lose any more weight. He's doing everything. Elimination diet, he's doing, training with them, he's talking to them, and for some reason, they get to this point, and let's create this number 200, because I see it a lot. You have this very large client who, let's say they're starting at 250, they get to 200, and for some reason, they can't get under 200. The other number I see is 140, because a lot of people want to weigh 135. So they'll get to, they'll start at, let's say, 150. They'll get to 141. As soon as they get to 140, the weight just stops moving. Something's going on. They can't lose the weight, or they're plateauing, and you don't understand what's going on. And I have my own ideas of what is happening when a client plateaus, and I'd like to share that with you. Now, we're going to start with some easy surface level stuff, and then we are going to get really, really deep. So prepare yourselves. Now, the first thing that happens when a client plateaus is self-imposed restrictions. And essentially, the client tells themselves that they're not supposed to get somewhere, and they keep repeating it, so they believe it, and since they believe it, they act it out. And this can be seen in a lot of times in the one-on-one phase when you're first talking to the client. After you've overcome a lot of their fears, you may ask them, you may go into the numbers, and you say, okay, Mrs. Jones, you're starting off at 185 pounds. What is your goal weight? And then Mrs. Jones will typically say, well, really it's like 125, but I can never get there. We're probably like 160. I'll be happy with 160. So they generally give you two numbers. They give you the number that they want, and they give you the number that they believe that they can get to. And usually when somebody gives me two numbers, I stop them right there. And I say, okay, in an ideal world, how much do you want to weigh? And then they'll say, okay, 125. Now, people will give you two numbers because they honestly, in their mind, do not believe, based on media or based on their friends or based on their own thoughts, that they cannot get to that goal. So they just completely take it out of their head. It is your job as a trainer to assess their numbers and to see if that goal is realistic for them. Now, if somebody's starting off at, let's say, 140 pounds and they already have like 18% body fat, a woman, for her to try to go to 110 because she believes that 110 is how much she's supposed to weigh is unrealistic. Perhaps she's tall, and just 110 is not going to work for her. But this 110 number seems to be very popular among a lot of women. So then it's your job to explain to them, okay, you may be better off shooting for this number, and then explain to them the importance of body fat, body composition, and then the person isn't as crazed about getting to this specific number. But for the client that can attain, let's say 125 from a 150 or a 160 or 170, whatever the case may be, your job as a trainer is to explain to them, okay, you have a goal. It's a lofty goal, but you can do it. It just takes time. And then it's your job to map out the goal for them. So then you have to tell them, all right, if you're taking in this many calories, I believe it's always a numbers game. If you're taking this many calories and you're burning this many calories, you can expect to lose, X amount of weight in X amount of weeks. It's just a matter of how long can you stay consistent. And that's my personal belief about attaining your goals in terms of weight loss and or fat loss. It's how long you can stay consistent, because most people, kind of tune out at the 6-month mark. I've been doing it for 6 months. I can't do this anymore. No, you let them know, all right, you are about a year away from your goal based on what you're telling me that you can give me. And if you get a little bit more aggressive over the course of your time because you're so excited about your results, you can get there faster. But I don't want you to have it in your head that you cannot achieve a certain kind of goal. I have two clients in my head right now. One had the goal of 135. She started off at 160, and she was a house of fire. She was running. In addition to my boot camp, she was running. She was eating healthily. She was getting a lot of sleep. She was engaging in habits that were consistent with weight loss. And then something very funny happened. As soon as she got to 150, to 145, to 142, she started to tell me, every time I get to around 140, I stop losing weight. I'm like, don't say that. Just stop repeating that. She's like, no. Every time I get to 140, I can't get to 135. I'm always stuck on 140. I can't lose any more weight. So she gets to 140, and then what starts happening? She stops running. She's a professional dart player, so she starts throwing darts. And if anybody's familiar with that environment, there is a lot of drinking because all the dart tournaments take places in these dive bars. So she's drinking a lot more. She's not coming to her sessions as often. She's not getting as much sleep. And then what happens? Her actions reinforce the thought process that she has embedded into her own brain. So not only is she telling you her history when she says, I can't get to 140, she's telling you her present and she's telling you her future. So you have to monitor the talk that they give you, the self-talk that they give themselves, because they may be self-sabotaging without even realizing. Now, the best thing that you can do is identify it, okay? Now, whether or not they choose to believe you is up to them, but you have to understand when your prospective client doesn't even believe that they can get to their end goal. So, identify it, address it, and hopefully you'll be able to help them achieve their goal. I'll give you tools to help them overcome that self-sabotage in a little bit. But I think about another client of mine who started off over 200 pounds and then through lots of wrestling, not literal, like verbal wrestling and emotional wrestling, finally got down to 200. And I'm like, what took you so long? And then she told me, she said, when I first started your boot camp, I basically said, I'm going to give myself a year before I, just to get used to it, and then I'll start losing the weight. This is what she told me, she told herself. And then, funnily enough, it was right around a year from her start date that she actually got to 200. And so, this is why the initial one-on-one is very important. You have to understand what your clients are telling themselves that they can achieve. Because nothing that you tell them can undo or overcome what they're telling themselves. You have to get them to tell themselves, I can do this. All right? Lest your client will just go on with their thinking. I probably won't lose weight for 6 months. I guarantee you they won't start losing weight until 6 months into the program. I can't get under 140. I guarantee you, as soon as they get to 140, they will find a way to mess it up. And they'll just say, I just lost motivation. It all begins in the self-talk. So you're going to have to go back, and anytime you hear that self-talk that's negative, you have to eliminate that from their vocabulary and their thought process. Now, how do you do that? Because it has been deeply embedded into their minds based on a number of things, based on other people telling them that they couldn't do it, based on lack of information, based on poor exercise and eating habits from the past, making them think that they had to stop at 140 or that they couldn't get below, this specific number. So you have to help them undo it. How do you do that? In addition to eating healthily and seeing you, a great thing that I have found for my clients is journaling. And essentially, what you have to force your client to do is journal. Writing things down and telling yourself that you're going to do something, my phone went off, actually helps you to do it. I think back to when I first started my boot camp, and I did not have a lot of clients, but every morning, as soon as I woke up, I would write to myself, I have 60 clients paying me so much money. I have this many boot campers. I would, in between boot camp sessions, drive through the town of Nutley, where I started, and then just look at all the houses. I'm like, all these people are going to be my boot campers one of these days. And I would get it in my head. In between classes, I would sit down in the gymnastics facility where the boot camp was held, and I would just imagine like droves of people walking through the door. I'd imagine people, handing me their credit card with really not much resistance. Because in the beginning, I experienced a little bit of self-doubt when it came to asking for payments. So I just kept on imagining people walking in the door. I imagined a room full of people. One of my personal training clients, I remember I left personal training. He was upset to see me go. Let me turn on this light. He was upset to see me go, and he knew that I started a boot camp. He wanted to check up on me and make sure I was okay. I had just started a new time slot. My 5:30 a.m. class was fairly well populated. My 6:45 was not. He decided to come to the 6:45. And so on that particular day where he came to that 6:45 class, it was him and one other person. Okay? So I'm telling him that I'm running a boot camp and that I'm doing well. And, I'm starting this new class. He comes in, there are 2 people. And I'll never forget, when I was getting the class started, I was saying, all right, everybody, let's start jogging. And then he stops and he looks at me, he's like, everybody, there are 2 people in the room. All right? And then he had a good laugh at that. But I look back at that, and my mindset is always, or has always been, I have a large class. I have a lot of people. For those of you that hear the buzzing, it's just my phone. Let me turn it off. So my mindset was, I have a lot of people, and I always acted in that mindset. So this client that has a self-mental block of, I can't get past this number, or I'm not going to start to lose weight until this deep into the program, you have to constantly get them to think thin. Think 135, whatever their goal is. Think fit. Think of yourself in your, with the body that you have. Experience that early. Create the world in your mind first, and then you'll be able to create it outside of your mind. And so your self-limiting beliefs, you'll help to eliminate. All right, now there's another reason why clients plateau, and that is mainly they're kind of like, how do I want to put this? Almost scared to try. All right, they're scared to try that hard. All right, or they can't fathom working any harder than they are. And people are very funny. If you give the right kind of motivation, people can do just about anything. All right, and sometimes people don't realize that they have the strength to be consistent or to work hard. So a question that I used to ask a lot of my personal training clients during our session, I would say, and this particular to Joanne, I'll never forget her. She asked her, hey, what's the hardest thing that you've ever had to do in life? What's the hardest thing that you ever had to accomplish? So in the middle of the personal training session, she stops and thinks. I'm like, no. Go home. Next time, sit down and really think about it. Next time that you come back, we'll talk more about it. And the story that she came back with was really, really impressive to me. She told me that she had problems having kids, okay? And then she told me that in order to have kids, every day for 2 years, she had to take these shots, all right? And then, she had, I think, one failed pregnancy, and then on the second one, over the span of however many months, she finally got pregnant. She had her daughter. And then I gave her a reference point. So I say to her, okay, you really wanted to have a child. You wanted something that bad. Okay, so you were able to endure, giving yourself these shots that, according to her, were physically painful and mentally trying and very frustrating because, she would get pregnant and then she wouldn't have the baby or it wouldn't work out. So for 2 years, she just kept on doing it. She just kept plugging along. And you will often help your clients to find their own strength, and you'll help them to realize whether or not their goal is that important to them. It is much easier to eat a balanced diet, for, let's say, 6 or 7 months straight, I think, or it can be as difficult as that challenge was in order to get pregnant. It's no harder, at least as it related to this particular client. So it's often a great idea to ask your clients, what's the hardest thing you've ever done? And then create a reference point. What's the hardest thing you've ever had to work for? And if they've never had to work for something, make this their goal. Make this the thing that they can hang their hat on. Okay, fine. you've never really had to do anything like that. You never really had to work at something diligently. Let's make this happen so that you can tell your kids, so that you can tell whoever is important to you, hey, I did this. And I can, can be an example that way. Now, the next reason for client plateaus is outside environments. And man, this gets my blood pressure going, because something called a symbiotic union, where essentially, two people hang out with each other that share very common traits. All right. So you go to the beach, you'll see, a bunch of cheerleader-looking girls hanging out with each other, and you'll see slightly larger people hanging out in groups and cliques. All right. And so, just because they hang out in cliques, that doesn't mean that they all have the same personality. They're not built the same way on the inside. They're just built the same way on the outside. And so, let's say Mary, out of this group of 5 heavy people, starts to train. Okay, and Mary starts to lose weight. So what happens? Let's say she started off at 225. She gets to 200, and then she plateaus. Why is this? You're going to have to assess your clients' relationships. This is so very important, because their relationships will play a huge part in their overall success. I was on Facebook the other day, and a friend of mine posted a picture of herself on the beach, and she said, "This is my motivation for my summer body." And I said, and I just posted, I said, "Way to go." And to my surprise, do you know what a lot of the other comments said? "You look fine. No, you look the same way. What are you worried about? No, you're beautiful." And that got me so mad. If that was my client, I would have, posted, "Leave her alone. She has a goal. Get off her case." And this is a lot of what happens with a personal training clients. I can't put a percentage on the number of people that it happens to, but in a lot of areas of life, your clients are often discouraged to move forward by their closest circle, because they don't want to see your client succeed. Let me go off on a slight aside. If you want to be successful in anything in life, you have to accept the fact that it may change your surroundings, okay? So what is happening with this client that was at 225, that was happy in their heavy group, that all of a sudden is at 200? They're starting to get more attention from the opposite sex. All of a sudden they have different interests than their friends. They want to go out to eat. You know what? You deserve a cheat meal. Doesn't matter what the trainer's saying. Their friends are saying, "You deserve a cheat meal. Oh, you need to take some time off. Oh, you need to do this. Oh, you look fine. Oh, you look so great." It's not a case now where the client is just so flattered that they stop. Like I mentioned in my personal training psychology video, it's a case where their environment, they're not willing to let their environment change. And perhaps this is something that you're going to need to go over with your client when you talk about their end goal. That as you change, your environment invariably will change. It will have to, because you are a product of your current environment. As it pertains to me, and I hope you heed the words that I use very carefully, because they're chosen very carefully. I have had a number of businesses that I tried to start, all right, and failed at a lot of them. And when I started the boot camp and made up my mind that I was going to be very successful at it, no matter what, I noticed that as I increased in levels of success, my environment around me started to change. The one thing in my failed endeavors that I was unwilling to change in the past was my environment and my closest friends. I had to keep my friends the way that they were. And perhaps it can speak to you as somebody that's looking to start their own business, or somebody that's looking to get into the personal training industry, or somebody that's trying to lose weight or gain muscle or win a competition. You have to accept the fact, if you want to make a drastic change in your life, there's going to be a drastic change in your environment, all right? And whatever it's going to be, it's going to be. But I'm going to hit my goal, okay? Now, let's go back to your client. I got a little bit amped up there. But when it comes to your client, their outside environment may force them to plateau. Do you think a husband enjoys when his wife is all of a sudden getting hit on by a lot of other guys? Perhaps you need to have a talk with your client and tell her husband, "Hey, listen, I'm glad I'm achieving this goal. Yeah, perhaps I get a little bit more attention, but you're the only guy for me, so please support me. They may need to hear that. Do you think a wife likes to see her husband all of a sudden get his arms, squeezed by his coworkers, or some young girl, that works in his office? Oh, Mr. Jones, you look like you're working out. Do you think they want to see that? No. Do you think they're consciously sabotaging their spouse, your personal training client? Not consciously, but I'm sure it happens subconsciously. Hey, honey, why don't you stay home? Why don't you skip that personal training session? Why don't we go out to eat? I all of a sudden want to have a piece of cake. Why don't you have it with me? This is something that will happen in their environment. I have a client whose daughter struggles with weight, and I almost wonder if she has sympathy and doesn't want to lose weight for the sake of her daughter not feeling bad. And this happens as well with friends, where it's very common sympathy pain for when a woman is pregnant. If she's very close to the father of the child, and the father of the child is taking care of her, as the woman gains weight, the father gains weight as well. Okay, it's called sympathy pain. So in your environment, if you're starting to lose weight, right, and your closest circle of friends, you can tell, are jealous, whether explicitly or implicitly or subconsciously or consciously or purposefully or unpurposefully, communicating to you that they are jealous or upset with your success. Out of sympathy and out of love for your friends, you may find that you hold yourself back a little bit. Maybe you don't try as hard. Maybe you're fine just where you are, and that's why you're going to plateau. It reminds me of when I was a little bit younger. I'm going to date myself, but John Elway's quarterback for regular Nintendo. I was playing my little brother, and I would beat him mercilessly, and he would cry. And my dad said, all right, why don't you just let him win? So I started letting him win, and before long, he started beating me in every game. And then I was like, there was a time when I could destroy this guy, but I just got so used to, letting him win because I felt bad for him that I became soft. And that's what can happen with your clients. They're sympathetic to other people. And one of the main things that you have to try to impart to your clients in a personal training or even a boot camp relationship is they have to learn to put themselves first. They have to learn to be their own top priority, because if they're not, they're invariably, for some reason, going to stop. They're going to say, oh, well, now, kids, I've seen a lot of cases where kids get jealous of their parents' success. The parents start to lose weight, and the parents start to prioritize their time well, whereas they used to be slaves to their kids. They're requiring their kids to be a little bit more independent, and the kids resent the fact that the parent, they're not neglecting them. They're just saying, okay, you know what? Do your own laundry or pack your own lunch. Nothing that's beyond the child's capabilities, but because life isn't as easy as it used to be when you just had complete control of this person, the kids resent them. So what happens? They stop working out as hard. They stop putting as much dedication into their weight loss routine because they don't want to disappoint their kids. They don't want to disappoint their spouse. They don't want to disappoint their friends. They don't want to disappoint him, her, or this. So this plateauing is happening because they haven't adequately expressed to their outside environment, or their outside environment is selfish. So perhaps you need to encourage your client to have a talk with their kids. Listen, I'm still your mom, I still love you, but you need to be responsible. Health is very important, and to that end, so is organization. And you need to learn responsibility. Do you want me to be, in 10 years on a stretcher or on some kind of, on dialysis or whatever? And do you want to have to take care of me for the latter years of my life because I spent all this time gaining weight? Now, if your kids are young enough, they probably won't understand this, and they'll say, no, I want what I want now. At that point, you're the adult. You tell your client, you're the adult, and you give your kids what they know they're supposed to handle. Love your kids, do what you have to do for them, but do what you have to do for yourself first, because the better you make yourself, the better you will be for other people. So, this plateauing is something that's very, very, you have to ask a lot of questions about what's going on with their relationships. Assess your clients' relationships often, and then you'll be able to see, all right, that's the person, or that's the group of people, or that's the relationship that's getting in the way. All right, now the next reason that a client would plateau is fear of the unknown. Okay, so they're gonna look at their end goal. They're gonna say like, you know, oh man, I'm really achieving my goal. What's gonna happen next? People have two ways of looking at things. More money, more problems. More money, more opportunities. Let's take a look at more money, more opportunities. The client that has this view sees, all right, I'm going to lose this weight, and then I'm going to be able to shop at this store. I'm going to be more confident. I'm going to be healthier. I'm going to be happier. That's great. That's the person that won't plateau. But consider rock climbing, all right? So if you're rock climbing and you're not really thinking about what you're doing, you're essentially doing the same movement over and over. Find a spot, grab a spot. Find a spot, grab a spot. Find a spot, grab a spot until you get higher and higher on the rock. It's not until you look down, if you're scared of heights, that you start to stop and freeze. Now, stay with me here. When you're stopping and freezing, you're not afraid of climbing. All right, what you're doing is climbing. Okay, you're afraid of falling. All right, you're afraid of the effects of your hard work. You're afraid of what might happen if you keep climbing or if you climb any higher. So, as it relates to weight loss, sometimes people are afraid of success, and you have to, when you start to see your clients plateau, if it's not a case of self-sabotage, if it's not a case of relationships, then you may have to ask, well, what are you afraid of? What do you think is going to happen? Because again, your outside environment is going to change. So if it's just a fear, if it's not just a blockage, if it's a fear, then you can shift their more money, more problems. If I keep climbing, I'm going to fall. To their more money, more opportunities. If I keep climbing, I'm going to get to the top. And there's a whole new level of experiences and advantages just waiting for me. All I have to do is keep climbing and stop thinking about, the fall. Because the climbing has not changed. Your efforts is the same. It's just that you're getting higher and higher. So don't be afraid of it. Continue to keep going. Now, the last reason for client plateauing is demons as it pertains to weight loss. Now, I'm going to make an attempt to go slightly beyond the scope of my own training and understanding and in schooling in psychology or training. Because what I have found is that there is somewhat of a correlation between weight loss and excessive weight gain. There's a correlation between excessive weight gain and sexual abuse. Now, this may be a small population of clients that you deal with, but they'll be easier to spot out, because from what I've gathered and from what I've found and from what I've experienced, these are clients that are not starting off 20, 30 pounds overweight. These are clients that are starting off 100 plus pounds over what they need to be, 120 plus pounds over what they need to be. And it reminds me of one client in particular who started off at 278. Okay, she weighed 278 pounds. We got to talking, and we got very deep in our first conversation. She told me that she had gotten through a divorce. Like, we had spoken for an hour before she signed up for personal training. And somehow I had, uncovered, or I just happened to ask, was there some kind of abuse earlier in your life? And then she acknowledged that. And it was like a very tough, one-on-one to have, but I don't know why it came up. I just know that it came up. And it proved very, very telling later on as we trained, because she was a house of fire. She finally got to a point where she was able to eliminate all the negative influences outside of her. She got out of her bad relationships. She started a new job. She started living on her own, and the weight was flying off. All right, and from 278, she got to 187. Now, a lot of heavier people hate hearing this, but this was the type of client who I knew as soon as I met her. I said, okay, well, I can see that she's 287 or whatever pounds that she weighs. But man, oh man, when she gets down to like her goal of, 135 or 140, like she is going to be the hottest person in the gym, hands down. Like sometimes you can just tell, all right? And I hope you don't take this as a sexist statement, but she was just beautiful. She was very heavy, but she was like really beautiful. And she started to come down, and it was right at around when she hit 187. That was the mark. I remember specifically because that's when we took a picture of like, okay, look at how far she's come. And I would notice as I was training her, more guys would like stop and ask her questions. Hey, how you doing? You're looking really good. She would start to get attention that she was not getting at 287. And she hit a serious depression state and plateau. This is the other fear of the unknown because and you can Google this. Google excessive weight gain, sexual abuse. And you find a fair amount of studies that there's a fair correlation between sexual abuse and excessive weight gain because people tend to overeat in order to overcome depression. But as it pertains to sexual abuse, they do it to make themselves invisible because society doesn't pay attention to morbidly obese people. So they use it as essentially a protective shield. She wasn't getting hit on at 287, but as soon as she got down to 187, 278, but as soon as she got down to 187, and the guys started like hitting on her, all of a sudden they're spending more time. Other trainers are like asking for her number, and I'm like, whoa, she's got a goal, man, leave her alone. You can see that it was starting to affect her, and it starts to make the possibility of sexual abuse more real. So, I am not qualified to give you advice on how to counsel a client on that. But what I can say is your training methods. If you got that first 100 pounds off or that first 85 pounds off, your training methods work. It's just that they need to deal with a lot of demons that are going on inside of them, and perhaps they need to take a slight break or a step back from training and seek psychological help with a professional that can help them overcome their demons from what may be as recent as a couple years back or all the way from childhood. And until those demons are overcome, they're going to stop at that point where they start to become visible to the opposite sex, or where they start to become visible to the general public. So you have to do what's best for your client in that regard. But I got the question, and I wanted to address what I've seen happen in terms of client plateaus and let you know that it's not just your training. Oftentimes trainers are so quick to say, okay, well maybe I just need to change everything, or I need to do this kind of workout or that kind of routine. And your client is not unhappy with your routine. It's just there's something going on in here. So you have to address it. Personal training is always going to have to be personal. So make sure to take the time to see and start it. Don't start it like sexual abuse. If somebody's plateauing, don't all of a sudden just go to them like you must have been sexually abused. No. Start at the top. Start at how much time did you give yourself to? What did you think going in? All right. Where did you think that you were going to have the most problems? Then assess. Do you think that you have the wherewithal and the guts to actually do it? From there, then assess relationships. Then you can assess more money, more problems versus more money, more opportunities versus more money, more problems. And after that, when all else fails, then you can go like back to the childhood. When did you start eating? And then perhaps you may uncover something that's a little bit beyond you. Just don't try to go beyond your own scope of understanding and training. If you have to refer out and do what's best for your client. Even if it means suspending the training for a while, they will come back to you and you will help them get over an issue that they may not have even knew they had. My name is Jonathan. I hope you found this video helpful, and I hope I didn't go too deep for you. Now, if you enjoyed this video, remember to like this video, comment on this video or add this to your favorites. I will routinely change the name or location of a video for search engine optimization or because it's better suited somewhere else. So if you always want access to this content, make sure to add this to your favorites. Now, if you're on Twitter, retweet this video. If you're on the Facebook, like or comment on this video, because there are a lot of other trainers out there, some of whom may be your friends on Facebook or Twitter, who would not have access to this information if it wasn't for your help. So, you're getting this information for free. If you find this to be of any value, don't try to pay it back. Pay it forward. And finally, if you just happen to stumble upon this video, subscribe to this channel, because there is going to be a wide range of information dedicated toward helping people outside the fitness industry get into the fitness industry, helping people that are personal trainers become better personal trainers or boot camp owners, and helping boot camp owners become very successful boot camp owners. So, if you subscribe to this channel, I promise I will do my best to hold your attention. Now, remember, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, add me as a friend on Facebook. Alright, you can send me a personal message on Facebook, you can comment on this video, or you can send me a personal message through YouTube. I'm on my computer all the time, and I will do my best to respond in a timely fashion, and you actually may inspire a video, as this video was inspired by a question that I got earlier last week. Remember to eat healthy, hydrate, drive safe. Stress levels low, get rest, don't slap anybody. Love your clients, they will love you back. I will see you all tomorrow or the next day, and you have a good one.